It's Saturday, May 9th. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and several people have asked me to do something on the recent tragic loss of the life at Austin's Airport 17 right on Thursday, May 7th. Right around sunset on May 7th, Southwest flight number 1392 was landing on runway 17 right at Austin-Bergstrom, the old Bergstrom Air Force Base airfield, when they apparently struck a pedestrian or somebody trespassing on the runway right on or about touchdown. This was just after 8 o'clock at night. Sunset at Austin this time of year is about 8:14, so it would have been in a low light situation. There was little or nothing the pilots could do. When you see something like this at that speed, the landing speed of a 737 can be as high as 130 knots, about 150 miles an hour. In these low light conditions, you're not going to see something on the runway until your landing light shines upon it. And at 150 miles an hour, it's going to go by whatever it is in a flash. As far as the passengers in the left side of the aircraft, the individual was struck on the left engine nacelle, right about here. Anybody in the left side of the aircraft, it would have been a real quick flash, but there was so much damage done to the engine nacelle, I'm sure that the passengers felt and heard the collision. The aircraft continued its rollout. Reports are indicating that the pilot tried to maneuver out of the way. More on that in a second. They rolled out to the they rolled out of the takeoff, the landing roll. Remember, that runway at Austin is over 12,000 feet long and 150 feet wide. The aircraft was cleared to taxi back to the gate, but the crew stopped at the end of the runway to sort things out. While the aircraft was stopped prior to continuing their taxi back to the gate, the crew was assessing what had just happened and was probably getting information from the flight crew in the back of the aircraft as to what they saw and heard as well. As far as maneuvering out of the way of something on the runway, once you're committed to landing, it's very difficult to do. Tragically, this sort of event happens frequently in the railroad industry, and you railroad engineers out there watching this channel, I'd like to hear your story about what happens in these sort of situations and what you do about it. Of course, a train, you're not going to get to stop anytime quick, and it's the same with the 737. As far as maneuvering out of the way, Chewy, no. About the only thing you could do is a gentle swerve over to one side to try to avoid the object. The 737, once it's on the ground with the nose wheel on the ground, steers with the rudder pedals. And there's also a tiller to the left of the captain, but that tiller is only used to steer the nose wheel steering at taxi speeds. You cannot get on the tiller at high speeds or you'll send the thing right off into the infield. So all you can do is a gentle swerve out of the way. You can't really, you could lift the wing a little bit if you're just touching down, but you're going to risk scraping the bottom of the other engine nacelle. You can raise the nose a little bit, but you're going to risk scraping the tail of the aircraft, so you're very limited as to what you can do once you're established in the flare on the landing, for the landing, in the 737 or in any of these large jets. So about the only thing you could do is just a gentle swerve over to one side or the other. You only got 150 feet to work with, and you got to avoid, you cannot put the right main landing gear off of the edge of the runway. This is only the third fatality that I can think of in the entire history of Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines still has an absolutely stellar safety record. They've had incidents, runway overruns, that result in no injuries, but only the only other two fatalities that I can recall is the victim that we lost during the rapid depressurization episode, which we talked about on this channel, and then years ago, the fatality of the young man from the runway overrun at Chicago's Midway Airport. Those are the only three fatalities that I can recall ever occurring at Southwest Airlines. Outstanding safety record. I again want to thank Victor over at Vass Aviation. I'll put a link to his recording. He captured the ATC recording of this, and from that ATC recording you can tell just how quick this situation developed. It was a perfectly normal, happy flight on final there, and then the situation suddenly turned very grim. The pilots were aware of what happened, it sounds like, just listening to the tone of the voice of the pilots while communicating with ATC once they stopped the aircraft and turned off of the active runway. It just reminds all of us how quick a situation can develop from a normal flight into a major accident investigation in just a matter of seconds. So always got to remain professional on the radios at all times, because you just never know when those tapes are going to be pulled. So this crew will probably go right back to flying after a couple of days off, or whatever their next flight is on the schedule. They'll make the decision as to whether they feel like they want to fly again or not. It'll behoove them to get back into the saddle soon, but they can take whatever time they need off that they want to after this incident. There's a lot of distractions going on in the airline industry these days with the economic free fall that the airline industry is in. It's up to everybody that's still flying today to compartmentalize that information and remain professional in the cockpit, and do not let these distractions get to you. Otherwise, I would also recommend to a lot of us to take advantage of the voluntary leaves of absences that the industry is offering at this time to spend more time with your family and the folks that you love at home. Thanks again for your support. Thanks again especially for your support over on Patreon, as I'm sure this content will be instantly demonetized by YouTube, as it usually is. See you here. Chewy, do you want to be on the camera that bad?